This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by Richard Payne, the Vice President of HSSQE at the Hornblower Group, to discuss his company and its rebound from the COVID pandemic, particularly in getting trained crews back on board. Rich, to start us off, can you give us a brief personal and professional biography with insights on the responsibilities of your current position?
Thanks, Greg. And first off, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. So my background goes about 25 years back in the maritime industry, where I've worked in in multiple sectors of the industry, including deep sea, tugs and towing, passenger vessels. I'm a lead auditor in ISM, ISO management systems, the TISMIS. I am a graduate of Fort Schuyler, SUNY Maritime College in both undergraduate and graduate degrees. And I also sit on a handful of different maritime committees nationally. So the Passenger Vessel Association's Regulatory Committee, Safety and Security Committee, as well as the New York, New Jersey Area Maritime Security Committee's Board of Directors. From the Hornblower standpoint, we've been doing a lot of growing over the last few years, and my role is at the Hornblower Group level. I oversee the growing business units at our city experiences anchored by Hornblower, with City Ferry, City Cruises, the American Queen Steamboat Company. And as we keep expanding from our 3 different vessel operating nations, we also are now in 111 different shoreside excursion countries.
I'm certain that anybody who's watching this and or reading this knows the Hornblower name. Why don't you just give us a short by the numbers look at the company today?
Sure. In the macro sense of what we are is that we operate in 111 different countries, 3 of those countries being vessels. The other side is shoreside excursions, tours, digital. What we are, as from a size of an organization, is pre-COVID, we were about 5,000 employees. We currently about 3,800 today. Our fleet size is 200 vessels. Within those vessels, we range from overnight cruise ships, high-speed ferries, water taxis, excursion vessels, high-thrill jet boats, military contracts, included as well as just traditional small passenger vessels.
But can you give us an overview of Hornblower's strategy to retain and retrain crew during this unprecedented event?
Of course. I mean, none of us, sat here a year and a half ago and had any thought that what would take place over the last year would be what we would have to work with to get back to even being, operating. And, we were subject to the same issues that took place around the globe as well as along the States. And unfortunately, a lot of our operations were closed. So as I mentioned a little earlier, we were at 5,000 employees. And then as the state and the government restrictions started coming in place, unfortunately, a lot of our employees were furloughed and laid off. So with that, we shut down a lot of operations. Our businesses, our doors were closed, our boats were tied up. And, thankfully, now that the majority of the pandemic is hopefully behind us, is that we're seeing a great opportunity here as we start reopening our operations, and we're up to about 3,800 employees. So from that standpoint, what we've been able to really accomplish is just rehiring. And the challenges of rehiring has been really related to getting labor back. So for us right now, it's really been trying to figure out how to get people to come back. And what we did during this period of slowdown, if you will, because we did still have some operations that were essential services and they kept operating, is that we did some self-reflection. We said, hey, what do we need as an organization to start rebuilding our employment pool, and how can we train people? So we started looking inside, back at ourselves, and said, hey, we need to look at inclusion. How do we start think about diversity? How do we change the culture so that we start building a culture that people want to work at? How do we move forward in that approach? And that's really what we ended up using a lot of our time over the last few months, is trying to develop those cultural programs so that as our employees come back and as we hire new employees, is that there's tracks for development and career paths that can prolong lengthy careers with us in the industry.
So Rich, I know that the challenges are many, but what do you count as the chief challenge to getting crews back and more importantly, getting them trained and retained?
That's a great question, Greg. I think the biggest thing that is working with a new environment that we're involved with. And what do I mean by that? Years ago, we used to be able to bring in a bunch of new recruits, bring them on the boat, train them, shoulder to shoulder, laugh, have a slice of pizza, do some training, and move forward. And unfortunately, over the last 12 to 18 months, is that one, not only was that frowned upon, it was also dangerous because of personal health. So what we've ended up doing, and this is something that Hornblower and we've been working on for quite some time, is introducing more digital technology-based training, computer-based training, online training. This has really kind of allowed us to expand and be flexible in how we do our training. Is that, the Microsoft Teams and the Zooms that I think everybody became, very well adept at over the last few months has provided us with some new training opportunities, which allowed us to do training at home. We allowed our employees that were coming back that might now, be working with us for a few hours, but are full-time parents, or, they have children at home because now the schools are closed, is that we introduced technology to find ways to train, efficiently on the important topics and subject matter that was important for them to do their job. But in the same regard, give them a little bit of additional flexibility using technology. We expanded some of the ways that we had previously done training. We were using simulators in the NYC ferry operation, to use an example. But the simulators were closed during COVID. The large simulator schools, they didn't have the availability. So we had to go back and start figuring out alternatives. And really using Microsoft Teams, Zooms, online learning management systems really allowed us to keep our crew coming back and being able to train on things that might have been done on board a vessel or in a classroom setting, now at their fingertips and a little bit of the comforts at home, or in some of the offices that were reopened.
Rich, obviously, digital has become a much more prominent aspect of our lives. But as you know, in the maritime industry, it's not all digital. It's on the vessel. It's hands-on. How are you balancing the training and retraining of crews in the live on the vessel format?
Greg, I'm very glad that you brought that up, because I think one of the challenges that's out there from an industry standpoint is that over dependence on digital and technology from a training standpoint. I kind of look at it from three different elements of training. I think there is somewhere for your digital-based training. I think there's something in a classroom where you need to be in a classroom setting to ask questions, which we've been able to kind of work through on the digital side, but you can never really replicate the hands-on training. Having a line in your hand, tying up a vessel, going down to an engine room, holding a fire extinguisher, charging a hose, all those related true vessel-based training. So what we've kind of looked at is that we try to do a preemptive approach, is that there's some modules and training that takes place about the topic itself. But when the crew gets on board the vessels, is that they're going to be checked off. They're going to be going through all the drills. They're going to have a chance to ask questions. We're not going to throw them right onto a vessel without having some information, not only in their background, but also having the chance to use it when they get on board the vessel. Make sure that they're going to be qualified to do the job. So it's really trying to find that balance, but by no means can you accomplish a fully trained crew in a digital atmosphere. Even the best simulation doesn't put you in a position to understand that, if you open up a window when you're running a vessel, that you're going to smell salt water or fresh water, based off of where you're at. But really the thing is trying to find a balance from training. And I think that's something that can't be lost. And I know that's how our approach has been, is that digital is a piece of it, and it's there to complement, onboard training. And some of the things that we've been able to do is the way we schedule our crew, is that instead of having large lumps of employees doing a crew training day, is that we spread it out a little bit. So maybe there's a few different maybe it's a little bit longer on the instructor side, but the crowd is smaller. The student size is smaller. And this allows us to still conduct some of the hands-on training that is necessary for a fully skilled mariner and a fully skilled employee for what we're trying to accomplish to bring out to the general public. So when people come on board our vessels, be it in the Mississippi or from New York or out in California or over in London, is that they know that they're going to have a crew that's trained not only in some of the most newest technology and having a chance to understand and what that means, but at the same point, they didn't lose those traditional mariner skills that are necessary to work on board a vessel.
Can you just kind of recap how COVID has materially impacted the way in which you manage and deliver seafarer training now and in the future?
Sure. I think looking at it is that as you expressed, Greg, is that COVID is something we hope we never have to discuss. Hopefully it's in our rearview mirror and we can say goodbye to it and never have to worry about it. But I do think that the furthering of technology has become now a staple of how we move forward with training. And I think COVID, fast forwarded that. It's kind of mentioned a little earlier, is just the fact that now people are younger and older and relied on technology over the last 12 to 18 months to order their groceries. So for us, what we want to be able to do is still have that as a piece, as a building block to our fully trained crew, but it will never replace anything that's taken place on board the vessel. Our commitment is still to get a hand on a line, fire extinguisher, go down to an engine room, do a round, see what working on a vessel is, because the one thing you'll never ever get, no matter how hard they try, from simulation to the newest thing from Amazon, is you never can get your sea legs when you're behind a computer on shore. And as anyone who's worked on the water understands, is that first time you work on a vessel, you realize that the boat moves and you have to be able to move with it. And that's something that we can never replicate in a non-real life hands-on training session.